here we are at the greening the banks of the Water of Girvan. We just completed some green engineering work in the last week, and we're back here today to seed it up before we put any coya down, just to protect it for over winter. The project is supported by Nature Restoration Fund, which is through NatureScot, the local district salmon fishery board, and also supported by the landowner. This site has suffered from years of significant bank erosion due to historic interventions such as levees upstream, which has meant that the erosion here is beyond the natural sort of level of erosion that you would expect in a river system, which means that massive amount of soil and silt are being washed into the river every year, which has an impact downstream on invertebrate populations and salmon and trout spawning habitat in particular. So it's really important that we intervene using natural means, using local materials, locally sourced, and create a sort of more natural bank that can function as a natural bank in a river system. This here is a technique using willow mattress laid on top of each other. It's a new technique to me. I've not used this before, but it's nice to see the process in which we lay different species of willow on top of each other and then bury it with some soil and then repeat the process all the way along the length of the bank. And then it's held in, again using willow stakes of different species, and pinned in using wire, with the end result being a living bank in a couple of years. And you shouldn't be able to tell that we've even had a hand in this, hopefully. The reason we're here and doing this work is because this river bank was not a nice natural slope as it is elsewhere in the system. It got to the point where the bank erosion had led to a sheer vertical riverbank, which meant that every time there was high water coming in, the water was eroding away and it was just collapsing away into the water, which obviously isn't great because that's putting out a massive amount of soil and silt into the water that shouldn't naturally be there. One of the last components of this work that we'll be doing is putting down a sort of coya membrane. So that's essentially a cover on top that's biodegradable. We'll be using biodegradable stakes as well. And it's just a nice cover that will protect the bank while the willow and the trees are establishing. But the reason we haven't put it down yet is, first of all, we want to get the seed down, get that growing, but also because it's October, it's really wet in the fields and we haven't been able to get our trailer in, and it's quite hiked to try and bring in 4 or 5 rolls of coya membrane, which is quite large and heavy.
So our expectation for this site is that very quickly we'll get the grass seed established. Despite the fact we're in early October, it's incredibly mild for the time of year. So our wildflower seed mix here and the ryegrass should establish fairly quickly. Okay, so what we were using was big willow stakes like this. You can see we've got a variety of different species here. These are a few that are left over, which we'll use to pin in brash bundles and key spots along this bank face, just to give an extra layer of protection. It's big pieces of willow like this, but 3 or 4 times or 3 times as tall as this, because it's about 3 feet, that are pinning all this banking together and holding the wire. So you can imagine that driven all the way down into the bank. This will all root. This plant will put out roots all through the length of it, and that working its way out into a river bank, which is pretty much denuded of anything vegetative at the moment, is going to give you a really solid bank in years to come. You get that root matrix in there that's going to bind and hold all the soil together and make it really resilient long term to erosion.
So this is still part of the project, this area here. You can see that this area of the bank is starting to get some poaching, livestock poaching, in particular sheep are able to access this. And basically by walking along and trying to eat parts of the bank here, they're cutting away and forming a sort of cliff-like bank. And the sections here, they're just going to, again, with time, fall away and just exacerbate this whole issue. We're going to use some willow and some brash and just be a wee bit more sympathetic in this area because it's relatively stable. And the key thing will be getting some roots and trees into it, and also excluding the livestock as well. That'll be a key thing we need to do to really improve this section of the bank.